What are the three key biggest fantasy football questions surrounding the 2022 Miami Dolphins? What does that mean for them going into training camp and the preseason? Time to break it down right here, right now, as we begin another edition of Locked On Fantasy Football.
Are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for sportingnews.com. So getting up for fantasy football here. We'll have a lot of great content for you with the colleagues I have at sportingnews.com. I'll contribute to much of that as well. So check us out there late July, August, all fantasy all the time. They're leading you up to your drafts. And we continue our advanced scouting mode here on this show, Locked On Fantasy Football, where we're looking at all 32 teams, the three key questions surrounding them. And we are now into the AFC. We've dipped our toes into this conference with the Buffalo Bills and this current division, the AFC East. So we'll knock out this division, then we'll get to all the teams here as we cross over into training camp here in Locked On Fantasy Football. So looking forward to breaking down the Dolphins for you, the key questions with them. And there are a lot of questions about the Dolphins and in-depth questions, and we'll get into them as best as we can and try to find some answers for you on today's show. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. We are free and available to you on all platforms. Let's look at the Miami Dolphins and questions. The Dolphins have plenty of questions here. Like we do with all these teams, our first question is about the quarterback. And here it is. Is Tua Tagovailoa a worthy QB2 sleeper that could have QB1 value here in 2022? That is a legitimate question. Now, Tua Tagovailoa is facing a pretty critical season. Remember, they had a little bit of a dalliance with Deshaun Watson and those rumors, and then the Brian Flores ugliness happened there with this team, and he was dismissed, and now he's with the Steelers. And then the Dolphins went in an entirely different direction with their head coach. They went young and went with Mike McDaniel, the former offensive coordinator there, right hand play caller there of Kyle Shanahan. So kind of now gets to break free. He's a wunderkind of kind. He went to Yale, so that tells you he's extremely intelligent, and he rose up fast here, and a lot of players love him. That was the one thing that followed him from the 49ers to the Dolphins. He's a player-friendly coach and play caller. He's going to put his best playmakers in position to succeed. Now, the bigger question is, who are those playmakers, and how does that fit in with Tua Tagovailoa? Is that going to be enough to prop up this quarterback going from, he's okay, he's a left-handed dude, he's got some skill here. He went to Alabama. He had a once promising pro career. It seemed like he was a can't miss guy. Then he fell behind Justin Herbert and Joe Burrow. Is this the time for Tua? We've already seen Herbert in two big seasons there for the Chargers. Joe Burrow fully healthy last year with the Bengals showed what he could do. And both of those guys are bona fide QB1s in fantasy football. Now, Tua Tagovailoa is not in that range. He is down there deep. You're looking at basically one of the early QB2s. There's a lot of quarterbacks like this. Derek Carr is another good example where they haven't been all that effective in fantasy, but a certain move perked you up about them. And for Tua, the biggest move is Tyreek Hill, getting him in that blockbuster trade with the Chiefs. So now he has another weapon here. So rule of threes we've talked about. He's got three premier weapons. Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle looking for more from his rookie season. And you have Mike Gesicki, got the franchise tag, signed his tender. So he's happy. He's playing. He has the biggest year yet. His numbers have gone up consistently. Tua loves throwing to the tight end. So Waddle, Gesicki, a lot of short intermediate stuff after the catch magic that we had. So you add now Tyreek Hill to that mix. You add a little bit more legit running game here to help. And don't forget about this part, two big acquisitions on the offensive line. Turn Armstead, the former left tackle of the Saints, and you also had Connor Williams. He was a top guard there for the Cowboys. So you upgrade two key parts of your offensive line, especially your blindside pass protection. Well, for Tua's case, it's the front side pass protection because he's left-handed. But that still means that Turn Armstead is going to have a key role with what the Dolphins want to do. So it is going to be something to watch here. And while Gesicki really produced well, they both were very productive in fantasy last year. We know where Tyreek Hill can take a quarterback. He was at the top of the charts here as a wide receiver. Everyone has downgraded Tyreek Hill to wide receiver too. We'll talk a little bit more about that in our second segment. But you look at Tua Tagovailoa, the weapons are there. The offensive line is a little bit better. The offensive scheming should be better. But let's also keep in mind the 49ers style of offense hasn't really produced top flight fantasy quarterbacks yet. It's been more facilitating for other guys. You haven't seen really Jimmy Garoppolo explode into QB1 status. He's still been a pretty solid QB2 that you can try out there in the best matchups. So there's that. And also take advantage of the guys he has to make plays after catch. So I also see another aspect of why that limitation is there for someone in this 49er style offense is the running game. They're a very run oriented team, and that scheme is going to continue with Mike McDaniel. They loaded up the backfield here with Chase Edmonds, Raheem Mostert, and Sonny Michel. So three newcomers. So last year, Edmonds was playing off James Conner. You had Mostert trying to stay healthy, come back strong for the 49ers. He has a good relationship, obviously, with McDaniel, and Sonny Michel filled in pretty nicely for the Rams when Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers were banged up there. And you still have Myles Gaskin in his backfield. So that kind of sets the table at the other positions. Now, going back to Tua Tagovailoa, do you really want to trust him? I would say buyer beware here. There's just too much better value that you can go after to finish in the top 12 where you're going to go that way. I think in the top 14 might also even be a stretch here for Tagovailoa. I think, again, run heavy offense, they need to protect their defense a little bit. Their defense has some playmakers with the pass rush and the secondary, but they can be weak in the middle. That's still a soft spot for this team. So, again, running, grinding out games, playing possession football, setting up favorable shots in the passing game. That's still what you're going to see here from the Dolphins is that they embrace some of the 49ers ways here this season with McDaniel. So again, Tua Tagovailoa, I'm going to go buyer beware on this one. I have to wait and see for those numbers to really pop up. I get why he's a sleeper. That Hill edition says that he could really take advantage of that big three in the receiving core, but keep in mind there's not a lot else in this receiving core. And we look at the running game, I think it's going to be a big factor. I think it's going to be one of the most improved running games we see this season. The zone blocking scheme, the concepts, getting a few more athletes in there in Armstead and Williams. So really like Edmonds, Mostert, Michel, however they break it down with Gaskin, to really help run the ball more effectively, take pressure on the quarterback, get a little bit more efficient results there. But that's also going to curb some of the upside with the Dolphins passing game. So I'm going to be very careful investing in Tua Tagovailoa. Now, he's not a bad sleeper to look at if you're waiting until taking a quarterback late as your QB1 into the bottom of that. And if you want to have an upside QB2, you can look at him. But I'm not drafting him pretty high. I think Derek Carr, as we mentioned, is someone who got a receiver in Devontae Adams. You look at his weapons a little bit better. I think he was a little bit more streamlined where he can get up to that level, where Tua still has a lot to prove to me in reality to trust him too much in fantasy. I think there's just too many better value guys that you can target to Tua. So I'm going to be very wary of QB2 status for Tua. I might even say do not draft him unless you get a really good value where you're getting deep, maybe in the 20s there as a quarterback, and then see what you get. Then may potentially work out as a starter, but I just don't see him being a regular guy. I think he's still going to be matchup based. He hasn't put it all together, and keep in mind he hasn't been fully healthy either. So this is probably his best chance to put it all together and prove that he is the Dolphins franchise quarterback here. There's no doubt about that with Herbert and Burrow, their situations from the same first round draft. So keep that in mind. There's a lot to prove. So just settling and being healthy and winning games and playing off what they have here is going to be job number one for Tua, kind of resettling himself. So the fantasy numbers, you totally can't go in that direction here in 2022. All right, our next key question with the Dolphins will center around their running game and their backfield or receiving potential here. in 2022. Before we do that, I got to remind you that BetOnline.net is your number one source for everybody needs in sports information. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of developments. And you got to check out the leagues that are going on here. A lot of action that isn't football. We do have some WNBA, even some soccer coming up. We know that it's the World Cup year, so a lot of excitement there. We know we have Major League Baseball about to go into the most important stretch after the All-Star break, July, August, September. So a lot of good stuff to check out, as well as the NFL futures. We've been looking at win totals, Super Bowl odds, other props that you can look at here while you're waiting for football return. It'll be here not too long with the August preseason games. BetOnline is your continued source for all your sporting wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. And BetOnline.net remains the best spot for our sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And we talked about all the other sports as MMA, boxing, golf. BetOnline.net is the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including those. Head to the website today. Use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, we will turn our attention in this segment to our second key question regarding the 2022 Miami Dolphins. Who do you trust most to produce fantasy numbers in their backfield? This is a good question, and it's going to linger over us quite a bit here. So the first free agent pretty much signed when the legal tampering period started, agreed to a deal, was Chase Edmonds. So the Dolphins had an eye on Edmonds here pretty early, and usually don't act quickly on running backs in fantasy or reality in that sense, where you jump on someone that quickly. They had their eye on Chase Edmonds being a good fit for what Mike McDaniel wanted to do. And it was pretty clear that he was not going to re-sign with the Cardinals, with James Conner getting the deal there and then moving on a little bit with their situation. So let's look at this. Chase Edmonds, right now atop the depth chart. Raheem Mostert, just an extremely hard guy to trust to stay healthy. He's on the older side right now. So looking at Raheem Mostert, can't see that really factoring in as a key option here for this team. Just not going to happen here in 2022. I think he's a guy that can kind of impart the wisdom of this rushing attack and what it takes, the zone blocking scheme there for Mike McDaniel. So a bit of a surrogate for the coach to be part of the running back room and then practices, trying to encourage these guys who have not been used to the system. So, and all these guys that aren't Mostert have to adjust. So Chase Edmonds coming from the Cardinals, he's been with the Cliff Kingsbury offense. There are some similar concepts that cross over there. Then you have Sonny Michel. He grinded, gave them some good power yardage numbers there for the Rams, showed he could do a little bit more, got some extended volume in some games as a receiver. And then you have Myles Gaskin. When you look at Myles Gaskin, he's a guy that he has shown something, but more of a change of pace back, good receiver and all that. So really interesting situation for Gaskin. Can he make the most of this? He would seem to have the skill set that most mirrors Edmonds here, but again, they went out and felt they need to get Mostert and Michel. So when you have a new change here in offensive scheme and the way you want to approach a running game, that usually doesn't mean good things for the incumbent running back. So Gaskin carried over. I think he's been a guy out of necessity that they've needed to use. He hasn't been quite stay healthy here. So again, my money is on the money, and that's following Chase Edmonds. I think he's going to be a key part of what they do. They like his versatility. We know he can be a good touchdown scorer from his days with the Cardinals. He's also a very good pass catcher, can do a lot. So when you look at that scat back type that can run and find the holes and really read defense as well, Edmonds is used to that. They can spread the field quite a bit here for the Dolphins and go that direction. So Mostert, the biggest issue is health. I mean, he can always surprise. He's a very speedy guy. If he can stay on the field, he could resurrect his career, especially in a very familiar scheme here with McDaniel. Michel's just a guy since he left the Patriots. He's not a bad power back, a little bit underrated as a receiver. He's got that Georgia pedigree as well. And Gaskin, I think, could hang around here as their best true backup in terms of what he can do skill set wise beyond Chase Edmonds. So I'm still leaning towards Chase Edmonds. It just points that way. Michel has had his share of injury issues as well. So keep that in mind. Edmonds has been relatively durable. I think he was helped by the fact that they had Conner there to take pressure off him in Arizona, where it wasn't all on him and they could spread the touches a little bit. So he's got the fresh legs coming in. That was probably another appeal for the Dolphins. But and coming over from an NFC West team, playing for a former NFC West coach, so you'll see him kind of in that 49ers approach. And there's a lot of parallels between him and Elijah Mitchell right now, the back of choice for the 49ers in the Shanahan offense without McDaniel. So really want to look at Chase Edmonds here as your primary option. I still think he's an RB2. Michel's going to be around to get a few touches, but it's a good sign for Edmonds that Mostert is the number 2 again. If Michel was the number 2, you worry a little bit more that he's going to cut into his work. But Mostert potentially not being healthy again, on mend again in his career, a little bit older, that points well to Edmonds. So we talked a little bit about Devin Singletary and what the threat of James Cook possesses there. And then you look at this situation, I would trust actually Chase Edmonds a little bit more than Devin Singletary. I think the backfield competition with Cook and Moss there in Buffalo is a little bit more daunting than what the Dolphins have with Mostert, Michel, and Gaskin. So Chase Edmonds is still where I'm leaning. Sometimes you follow the money. They invest good money in him, and they were quick to do so where position with supply and demand usually doesn't happen. They didn't really also address that position when everyone thought they might in the draft. So a lot of things went on there. Part of that is not having the same assets after the Tyreek Hill move. So there's that to play, but Edmonds definitely looks like their back of choice here and the one that we're going to target in fantasy football. All right, there you have answers to 2 of the 3 key questions for the Dolphins here for fantasy football in 2022. We'll get to the big one surrounding their wide receiver core in our final segment. Before we do that, I got to remind you, this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. With the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models, it's now possible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need. Why do it often pointless or seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on the computer, choosing the only brand their rest happens to carry? You have computers with access to rockauto.com at home in your pocket. Save time and money when using Rock Auto. Rock Auto prices are reliably low for every customer. Why would you choose to spend 30, 50, even 100% more for the same parts from a chain store or a car dealership when rockauto.com is going to get them to you and make it easy to find them on their website? Their prices are reliably low for every customer. Everything you could need is available at rockauto.com. That includes brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet for your car or truck. Go explore their easy-to-use website today to find the solution to your auto part needs. I've done it several times. They make it easy. Shopping is simple, and you can take care of your vehicle pretty quickly here by going to rockauto.com right now. You can see all the parts available for your car, truck. Right, Locked On and How Did You Hear About Us box, so they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. You will find them at rockauto.com. All right, it is time to close the show looking at our potential biggest question that we want to know in fantasy football for the Dolphins here in 2022. Is Tyreek Hill really down to a wide receiver 2? Now, you look at some of the rankings out there, no player has slid down more than Tyreek Hill among the top wide receivers. He was right in the conversation with his touchdown totals and what he did with the Chiefs to be a very high elite wide receiver 1. Now you're seeing behind guys such as Michael Pittman Jr., behind Deontay Johnson. That is what's happening here with Tyreek Hill in this transition. So I think a lot of that we know is tied to the lack of faith in Tua Tagovailoa, but that's not the only concern here, that Tua may not be able to connect with him downfield consistently. There's that, reestablishing chemistry. He had incredible chemistry with Patrick Mahomes, trying to adjust to a new quarterback that nearly isn't as good, a quarterback that's also left-handed and not there established with his arm the way that Mahomes is and can throw the ball so that Tyreek Hill can track it down anywhere on the field, even if he's going the distance here with those 65, 75, 85, even 100-yard balls that Patrick Mahomes can throw. Now, that's our biggest concern. Can Tua get it to where Tyreek Hill likes it? Will the cheetah be able to slow down a little bit and catch up to Tua's shorter balls here? That's what we need to find out. And another factor is that Jalen Waddle is a very similar type receiver, and there's an established comfort level between Tua Tagovailoa and Jalen Waddle. Waddle, who is the comparison for him coming out of Alabama? A lot of Tyreek Hill, because he's quick, fast, can work on the slot, can work on the outside, can take a short pass the distance, can also stretch the field when needed as a home run hitter. So that's what's factored in. But one thing I think people are forgetting about with Tyreek Hill, there's not a lot in this passing game that you look at, and we know in this 49ers style of offense can support an alpha used with high volume, like we saw with Debo Samuel. And they're going to get the ball in Tyreek Hill's hands creatively as well. If they can't get Tua to straight up hit him on the deeper balls, they're going to find ways to incorporate Tua Tagovailoa. So I think this actually hurts Waddle's value a little bit. I think if Waddle was the primary guy, number one for sure, I think you were looking at him as a wide receiver one. Now, Tyreek Hill, I think you're going to take advantage of him slipping out and try to find him there where you can get him as a backdoor wide receiver one. I think that potential is still there. I think he's just too talented here where Mike McDaniel's too smart and he's going to find a way to get it going. If Tua can't just straight up hit Hill on those longer passes, they're going to get the ball in his hands as much as they can. So I think there's a little bit of that parallel between Debo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, and these two being the primary receivers. Not a lot else there when you look at the depth chart for the Dolphins. I mean, really, without Devontae Parker, those key targets are gone. So that there's a chance there for Hill to step up, and they do have Cedric Wilson. They picked him up from the Cowboys, I should say, an underrated pickup there in free agency. But then they dropped down really quickly. They have Eric Ezukanma. He's a rookie. You have Lyndon Bowden Jr. We know he's kind of a converted hybrid guy from Kentucky. You have Trent Sherfield, comes over from the Cardinals as well with Chase Edmonds, and also was a 49er. So they have some experience there together in the NFC West. And then you round it out with Preston Williams. Remember him? He had a once promising career there with the Dolphins, couldn't quite stay healthy. He was going to be the number two guy that plays off Devontae Parker, eventually take over as the number one. That did not materialize. He did not become the next Darnell Mooney for the Dolphins. So he's buried in their depth chart, something notable to keep in mind when you look at Cedric Wilson now being the number three. So Wilson was pretty good for the Cowboys, but it's not like he ate up key volume. And we talked about three key targets here, Hill, Waddle, and Gesicki. So not too many mouths to feed, but enough for Hill to play off these guys. So look, finishing in the top 12 as a wide receiver is extremely difficult. You got to get the touchdowns, break your way. There's a lot of guys putting up big numbers. So I think what you're going to get instead is you're going to have two high-end wide receiver twos. We'll take it with Hill and Waddle. So they'll cut into their roles a little bit. I think the presence of the other one is going to keep either one of them from dominating. That's how I feel. I think Waddle is just not getting enough credit on how individually talented he is and how it matches up and meshes and plays off well of what Hill can do. So that said, I think it's going to be pretty even between these two guys. They can be used in similar roles. I think Hill, again, a little bit better of a straight-up field stretcher, but that may not be what Tua Tagovailoa's strength is here in relation to Mahomes. And you have Mike Gesicki. Remember, short to intermediate routes, throwing, getting the ball out quickly. That's still going to be a big factor with Tua. So, again, I think everyone's right in not taking Tyreek Hill and treating him as a top 12 wide receiver one here in fantasy football, but I think he's a little bit higher end wide receiver two than people would think. I think McDaniel's too smart. I think Tua is still pretty talented. He was still on very much prolific offenses with Alabama, so the potential is there. They're going to, again, facilitate the playmakers as much as possible. So if they have to shorten to a stroke, short to intermediate to get the ball in the hands of these guys, they're going to do it as much as possible. So I also see with the backfield, I think they'll try to be effective running the ball and use the zone blocking scheme, but I think they're going to have to throw more than they would like there with some of their defensive issues. That's going to really favor Hill, Waddle, and Gesicki playing off each other really well in this offense here in 2022. So it's kind of a trick question. Is he a wide receiver one? In terms of finishing the top 12, may not be, but in terms of putting up those numbers, him and Waddle could have very nice contributions here. And again, do we trust Tua Tagovailoa all that much? No, because again, it doesn't really extend beyond three guys here for the production, and they could still have quite a few rushing touchdowns here. But I would say the biggest thing they're going to go away are the touchdowns, the yards per catch, but he can reinvent himself in other ways. He's a short area guy as well. So that's going to bode well playing off Waddle here in 2022. All right, there you have it. The three key questions explored here for the Dolphins in 2022, trying to set them up here for what we're looking for in training camp in the preseason. We will turn our attention to another Alabama quarterback-led offense there with Mac Jones and the Patriots on our next show. So looking forward to that. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen today. Now, make sure your second listen is the Locked On NFL podcast, where national NFL experts and insiders keep fans dialed in with the biggest stories and latest news from around the league, because an offseason doesn't equal breaking the action. We know that for sure here at Locked On Fantasy Football. For our look at the Miami Dolphins, for Locked On Fantasy Football, this is Vinnie Iyer. Have a great day, and we'll catch up with you next time looking at the key questions surrounding the 2022 New England Patriots.